Hey guys, how are you? Hey, check this out. I think this is pretty cool. It's hope you can see that. It's a vintage Swiss stopwatch. All mechanical. You know, this used to be a pretty common tool at a place I used to work. These days, pretty hard to find. I guess they've all been replaced with iPhones with digital timers in them now. But not too long ago, this is a pretty common item, a mechanical stopwatch. It shows you how much time has elapsed by simply reading the dial. And if you want to stop it, you just push that button. You can even reset it to 0 with the other button. Make all the time go away. Pretty cool. But you and I know that in this world, in this reality, we can stop the clock, but we can't stop time. And our own bodies work kind of like that stopwatch, where you can look at a person and you can tell just how old they are, more or less. And so that's the bad news, is that time invariably marches forward. And as we get older, we pay the price. We get gray hairs, our bones get brittle, the injuries get harder to recover from. But the good news is that we can do a lot to control how quickly we age. So I'd like to offer a little bit of advice for you that I've garnered to try to help you age a little more slowly, a little more gracefully. And I won't try to cover all of it here in this one video, but I'd like to just give you a tip. Before we begin, let's do a little mental exercise, if you will. Imagine that it's a beautiful summer day, and you're out in the park, and it's green grass and trees, and as we walk along, we come up to a river which has got clear, blue, clean water in it. And it's a pretty wide river, and it's moving very slowly south. And we know that about a mile down the river is a restaurant that we really like. And so it's a gorgeous warm day, and we decide to take a little swim in the river. So we get undressed and jump into the river, and we're swimming downstream. And we're going maybe a little less than a mile. And you can just feel the water moving past you, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous day. And we traverse the river and glide on down. And then we get out near the restaurant and walk up on the sandy beach and shake ourselves off and go have lunch. It's pretty nice. And then we decide that, well, we have to go back. So we step back into the river, and now we're going to swim north. And the river's not moving very fast. So we're swimming upstream, but we're pushing through it. And we get halfway up there and getting a little tired, get about 3/4 of the way, and you're thinking just a little bit more. And we finally get to the beach where we originated from, and we step out of the river and shake off, and you're exhausted. You see, it was really pretty easy to swim with the river, but swimming against the current's a whole other story. And it's a nice river, and it was warm and comfortable, but just a little bit of river motion makes that swim back so much more difficult. Well, that's how things are in our life, you see. One of the greatest things that I think you need to get under control if you're going to have a good life and live well and live healthy is stress. And you can see it in people. When you look at people who are in their middle-aged, some people have a lot of wrinkles and a lot of gray hair and a rough attitude. And these people have a lot of stress in their lives. And then you can see other people who might be spiritualists or yogis or hippies or just carefree individuals who seem to wear their age very well. Gray hair. Yep, it's caused by stress. So, what is stress exactly? Well, there's certainly a lot of it in our lives today. I think of average guy gets up in the morning at some ungodly hour when he'd really rather be staying in bed. He drags himself out of bed. Then he digs through the kitchen, realizes that the kids ate all the food that he wanted to eat. That's frustrating. Gets in his car, tries to drive to work, and invariably there's a couple of people on the road who are holding him up. Doesn't see that there's a real good reason for them to be holding him up. And so he's frustrated by that, thinking, people, come on. Gets to work, and he's got some good friends at work. But there's also a few people at work who, well, if it wasn't for his work, he probably wouldn't be associating with these folks, and his boss gets him a little irritated. And he wouldn't be there if he wasn't getting paid. It's a tough gig. Then they go home. Same situation. Deal with traffic. You finally get home. And maybe he has a little bit of a disagreement with the wife. Plops down. Turns on the television. Watches a sitcom show that promotes some values that might not be perfectly in line with his own. And he's going, oh, this is ridiculous. So he flips over to the news. And the newscaster is imploring to him that here's a situation that you should be really upset about. This is outrageous. And he's sitting here shaking his head going, oh, that group of people, they really don't align with my values. Oh, that country, that's a problem for our country. All these sorts of stress. And, most of it is pretty artificial, but we let it drive us around all day long. Well, you see, lots of things happen to us in this life. Good things, bad things. But we have a lot of control over how we interpret those events. Just because an emotion comes into our mind doesn't mean that we have to act upon it and embrace it and accept it as our own immediately. That's one of the great things about being a human, is that we have the power of intelligence and discernment. So when you feel a certain way, you can step outside yourself for a little bit, acknowledge the emotion, and then ask yourself, is this really helpful in this situation? Now, getting back to my original question, what exactly is stress? Well, here's something that occurs to me as a definition. I think that stress is perhaps the distance between our ego's desires and reality. I might desire something to be a certain way, but if it is not that way, I have to adjust my ego and accept the reality. And that's my problem. It isn't the problem with the world. The world just is the way it is. And my stress is an indicator to me, like any other form of pain, that something isn't right. And in this case, it's my ego that isn't right. I might have a really strong belief system that I can fly. But the reality is that if I jump out of a third-story building window, I'm probably going to hurt myself. And so that delta there between the reality and my belief system or my expectations is pain. And that's what the stress is. It's the delta between reality and our desires. You're driving to work, and there's a guy in front of you who's going slowly, and you're sitting here going, "Come on, people, seriously?" Well, you're refusing to accept the reality of the situation. Your ego would like it to be a high-speed ride, but the reality is, it is not. So wherein lies the problem? Sure, it would be nice if the world conformed to our belief system, but that just isn't reality. And getting angry at the world doesn't advance ourselves too much, does it? But being able to accept the world does. You see, when we swim downstream, we're going with the flow. We're accepting reality, and everything's easy. But when we try to swim upstream and go against the natural grain, that's when the pain comes. And pain is just an indication that we're not on the right track, see? So it's pretty simple. So when we're feeling stress, it's an opportunity for us to step back, examine ourselves, examine our emotions from a neutral point of view, and ask what's happening, and if we are embracing reality or fighting reality. And if you learn to embrace the reality, we have emotions for reasons, but if you can look at your emotion and say, does this emotion serve me, or is this emotion impacting my progress forward? The emotion is here to try to help you, nudge you back on track. And the more you fight that emotion, the more stress you engage in. And long-term stress is rough on everything about you. And so we have to learn to let go of our ego and accept reality. And then when you do that, you have less stress. And when you have less stress, you have a better life and fewer gray hairs. It's not easy, because we live in an environment where we're invited to the stress game on a regular basis. For example, if you look at the evening news, almost every story is that this group of people is right, this group of people is wrong. And most of it really doesn't have much to do with your life. So why are we consuming that product? Why don't we just turn that off? If people come to us and bring us their problems and their stress, we always have the choice to engage or not engage, to become emotionally invested or not. So I invite you to do this over the next few days. Make a conscious effort to stay centered and not let things bother you. Let things slide off. Examine them logically. And be really nice to people and kind. And give out positive vibes, because that's what you'll probably, in most cases, receive back. Because when you deal with friendly, happy people, you tend to be friendly and happy. Our emotions are contagious. And so, if somebody tries to give you something negative, you can let them keep that themselves. You don't have to take it. And if somebody gives you something positive, give them something positive in return. And I think you'll find that the days are better. So that's my feelings about stress. And I think it's hugely important, because I think stress is one of the number one things that shortens our lives and makes our lives less fulfilling than they really should be. It's been a lesson for me, and so I'd just like to pass it on. It's something that I've learned over the years, and I'm still a work in progress. It's easy to get wound up and caught in the whirlwind, but the less you do, the better it is generally. At least that's been my experience. Your mileage may vary. So that's my episode on stress, and I hope you have a happy, stress-free day, and I'll catch you next time, and we'll pick this up with another key to having a happy, successful, and fulfilling life. Thanks for spending the time. Catch you again.